there's this creativity that our mind has to formulate different kinds of experiences, right? You're experiencing the mind, which is a constant. Your awareness, that's a constant. But the creativity, the formulation, the coding of our thought is a variable, right? So I could be sitting here and my thought is showing me you and giving me things to say to you. And I kind of, now that I'm thinking of it, I have an awareness of the room, which I didn't a second ago. Now, if a thought pops into my head about, oh my God, I forgot to, I don't know, whatever, and I start thinking about that, you could be talking, but I won't hear you, right? Because I'm aware of what my thought is doing. And our thought changes. Like you can have a huge variety of experiences, right? You can be absolutely devastated and you can be thrilled and elated and a million other things too. And that's the ability of thought. So we're experiencing the mind through this varying creativity of thought. But what's interesting is as soon as you have a thought, it never looks like a thought because a consciousness feels like a fully blown reality. So when I'm stressed and panicked about having lost my keys and I'm rummaging through the house like a mad person, and Leela says, well, hey, you don't need them till tomorrow afternoon. Do you think you're taking this too seriously? I don't say, oh yeah, good point. Why didn't you say that earlier? I will absolutely if I listen to that thought, I'll bite a head off and say, you don't understand it, because it doesn't feel like thought to me. But a minute later, I could feel like, oh, I've looked everywhere. There's no hope. And anyway, I don't need them till tomorrow afternoon. So thought makes this experience of our mind very tricky because it creates very different outlooks of reality. Like Sydney Banks talked about it like a paintbrush, like you're literally painting different realities moment to moment. Now that might sound ridiculous, but once you start to get curious about it, you'll see it's true. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. You can get really mad, really angry. It's the most important thing in the world. And when that thought drifts away, sometimes it's hard to imagine how you could possibly have been so upset and what it could have been about. Right? So it just shows you that we're living in this creative, sometimes people call it illusory experience of thought brought to life by our senses. Right? Now, when you tell that to people, sometimes they're like, well, that's a bit nihilistic, isn't it? So there's no meaning in life. And that's where the principle of mind comes in, because this is the most radical part of what Sydney Banks proposed, is that the underlying nature of the mind, no matter what your thought creates, the underlying nature of the mind is in the direction of deep mental health, profound universal intelligence, well-being, love, connection, and everybody's the same essence. Everybody's the same. We have different personalities, we have different IQs, but we all have exactly the same fundamental nature. Now, that idea that everything you need and that you're looking for is already there, it doesn't require work, it doesn't require development. That's radically new. There's not many perspectives that include that. And what that means in terms of how it all comes together, Razmik, is in a way, it doesn't matter what you're thinking because it's always going to be temporary, because thought only lasts as long as you think it. They're temporary illusions that just feel solid. So whatever you think, you're always going to come back to the nature of the mind. Like your thoughts always going to neutralize to the nature of the mind. So in terms of your well-being, your love, your contentment, your sanity, your mental health, you're always going to come back. And I see that with people that I work with that have had clinical diagnoses. In the course of talking to them, there are always times where they're mentally healthy and asymptomatic. Now, they don't always notice that. They don't always appreciate that. They don't know that that means underneath all the thinking, they're perfectly fine. But it shows you that is the case. And it shows you how important it is to recognize the only thing that comes between us and our happiness, contentment, mental health, connection is thought, and thought by its nature is temporary, although we can mistake it for something more than that. So in a way, these principles point to the fact that but for the way that we relate to our thought, there's nothing to stop us from really benefiting from this deeper nature of the mind.